Hey, Boaz from Next Pittsburgh, and we're here at the Carnegie Museum of Natural History in Oakland. You've probably been to the museum, but we're going to show you a part you probably haven't seen before. We're going up these old stairs to the alcohol house. Inside this door, once we get past these doors, you are going to see thousands and thousands of jars of reptiles and amphibians, and we're going to meet our guides who are going to tell us what's going on. We got John behind the camera. Hello, how's it going? We've got Stevie over here. You're the collection manager of amphibians and reptiles.
Yes, I am.
And Jennifer, who's the curator.
That's right.
So where are we right now? I know this is the alcohol house.
Yep. So we are in basically the collection of amphibians and reptiles. So the alcohol house is so named because, as you can see behind me, there's lots of jars with alcohol. It's actually ethanol, 70% ethanol. All amphibians and reptiles, by and large, when they're stored long term, they're stored in ethanol. So that's where this space gets its name from. And so these 3 floors of the alcohol house house the majority of the collection of amphibians and reptiles here at CMNH.
And so how many jars are we looking at right now? Like, it's pretty overwhelming because I don't know, you can see it goes up a floor also.
So jar count is fun. I have personally counted the jars on one stack and I got to about 150, but that's of one stack, one side. We don't count in jars, we count in specimen numbers. So we have over 250,000 specimens, majority of which are housed in this building. We also have dry specimens, our bones, but they're in a different area completely. But 250,000 specimens in thousands of jars.
And so can you just pull out a specimen over here and show us what's going on in there?
Okay. I'm going to pull out one of my favorites.
Okay, Jennifer's got one of her favorites here.
This is the shelf of vipers. And I really like vipers for many reasons, one of which is that they have venom and they have these really impressively triangular shaped heads. This specimen, or this species, Tropidolaemus subannulatus, is actually from Borneo, where I do a lot of my research. So I see these guys frequently in the field. There's several species within this genus. They tend to be...
So wait, you say you see this in the field, so you've been in Borneo walking around and you see this snake.
Absolutely. And they're so stunning. And because...
And this is when you brought back with you.
No, this was collected before I got here. But these are sit and wait predators, as many vipers are, so which means they kind of like find a good spot and they just sit there and they wait for something to come by within striking distance. And what's really cool about these guys in the field is that they'll often sit in the same place for days. And so you can go back and take pictures of them. I bring students to take a look at them and just look at their beautiful coloration. You can see this specimen in the jar looks kind of like turquoisey green. Yeah. In life, they tend to be really, really bright green, very brightly colored, and they retain some of that color in preservative.
And so we look at this specimen, like what info can we get from the tag? Like, we know it's from Borneo. Do we know when it was caught or alcoholized?
Absolutely. So generally, when we take specimens into our collection, we get all of those details, specifically where it was caught, who did the catching, any details about whether it was where it was found, sort of like microhabitat. Was it sitting on a branch? Was it sitting on the ground? And also the date of collection, as well as latitude and longitude, meaning very specific georeferencing information. So we get all that information, and then scientists come through our collections and they'll look for things. I personally look at impacts of climate change on body size. So I've used our collections and collections from many other museums to look at size change over hundreds of years.
Because you've got various specimens here from like the 1800s.
That's correct. Our oldest specimen is from the 1870s. It's actually a small lizard from an island in eastern Indonesia. And that's our oldest collection. And our collections go through, I think last year we had new collections from Joe Townsend. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Wow. And so can you give us like a general tour, I guess? So it's like we're in like Snake Town over here in this corner.
Snake Town, USA. Exactly. Yeah, so this second floor here, along the perimeter is all snakes. We've got these gray cabinets here that are salamanders. Up on top, on the third floor, we have frogs that wrap around this side, and then the lizards come along this side. And all of the specimens within the collection are organized taxonomically, so they're alphabetical by family, and then alphabetical by genus within that family, and then by species, and then locality.
Wow. Okay. Well, can we pop upstairs for a minute and visit some frogs?
Absolutely, yeah.
Lead the way.
Oh dear. Okay, let's try this. Another thing I want to point out too is, yeah, we are basically a giant library, and Jen mentioned looking in those jars that we can get the data off those specimens. They all have numbers, a lot like the Dewey Decimal System in a library. Hold on to the handrail. It's a little sketchy up here.
I just want to point out that John's doing some death-defying backward stair climbing.
It's an old building. This building, this part of the museum was built in 1907. So come around here. So it's pretty old, and we have the nice infrastructure to go with it. But the other part that I wanted to mention is that the specimens have their own tags. So you can see those. And that's how I can figure out who is what and find out all that information that Jen was mentioning, the data collection, the collector, et cetera, et cetera. But then if we actually look at the jar label, that gives me even more information. The species, the catalog number, so all those Dewey Decimal numbers, and the locality as well. So I know.
Some Mexican frogs here.
Toads, yeah, they're Mexican. Toads.
God, I'm so sorry. I apologize to you.
You're good. So you're still correct. So like it's like the weird square is a rectangle, but a rectangle is not a square thing. So frogs include frogs and toads. So toads, yeah. You can also note that the toads by the giant parotid glands, right by their eyeballs. Yeah, they're cute.
And I understand because some of these specimens go back, 150 years essentially, some of the animals here are now extinct in the wild.
Yep, that happens. We have, let's see, 4 species. 3 of them are frogs. So if we continue back in through the collection, we can actually see them. And we also have 1 extinct species of turtle. So as we mosey along, noticing all the other jars and everything else around here too, it's important though that we have these extinct species and specimens in our collection because you'll never potentially be able to see them again. Folks are constantly going out and continuing to explore, and fortunately we've been able to find some of those species, but due to habitat destruction, introduction of diseases, come over here. If you want to come over here, you can actually see them. We don't find these species much anymore, but they're still in the collection. Researchers can still come and look at them, be it to measure body size, see if, how similar they are to species that are still surviving. Another big push with extinct species, especially for amphibians, is doing pathology of sorts, looking for pathogens, seeing if something, specifically chytrid fungus.
Like a little autopsy.
Kind of, yeah. Seeing if there's a presence of that chytrid fungus, that disease that extirpated all these populations, all these species of frogs. So it's important that we still have these specimens, all the specimens, but especially the extinct specimens.
And when you see all these shelves of them, you really realize, like, oh, this is a reference library, essentially.
That's what it is. Yeah. And, as we've been saying, these things date back 150 plus years, and you need references from many years. That's why as you scan through these jars, one jar has a bunch of specimens. They're not all collected at the same time from the same specific locality. It's many places from many years because individuals like Jen, who work on climate change, for instance, and how that impacts body size, need to look at specimens, at individuals from across time spans. So that's why each jar has a lot of critters, and we are a reference library, and we will keep collecting ethically when we can.
What's wild, looking at this giant jar of frogs, it reminds me of it at Toy Store when there's a big tub of figurines of you shove in there. And it's wild. I was going to ask this question, and when we came in, it was sort of answered. I was like, do you just open the jar and shove your hand in? And when we walked in to meet you, your hands were in a giant tub, and you were holding 4 alligators. So the answer is yes, I guess.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, and the other thing I want to say about this is, so these extinct species are from Sri Lanka, and this happens a lot. I work in Southeast Asia, and there's a lot of new species being described all the time. And the thing about these is that these are from a region where we still don't know even what the biodiversity currently is. And a lot of new description comes not from people going out and sort of discovering something and realizing in the moment this is definitely new. It's from going back through collections specimens after having gone out into the field and seeing, oh, wait a minute, these things that we sort of used to classify as one thing, we now realize there are actually multiple species out here. So diversity is a lot, often in some of these regions, a lot bigger than we initially anticipated. And so it's a little bit, disheartening that some of these species are already extinct maybe before we even know what else is out there. But yeah, we've got great jars of lots of specimens, and I think it's really important, like Stevie said, to maintain these collections for lots of different things. We've got researchers who come in, people, like we said, studying impacts of climate change. We also have colleagues over at Pitt who are looking at the gut microbiome. So this is something I never would have thought to have looked at specimens for, but they have been using our collections, making new collections to contribute to this, looking at how gut microbiome has changed over time. So they've actually taken some of our specimens from 20, 30 years ago, sampled out their gut and looked at the gut microbiome to look at what that tells us about the environment at that time.
Wow. Oh, John's got a question.
Am I correct that we have lost a huge percentage of the number of frogs or amphibians on Earth within the past 20 or 30 years?
So population-wise, yes. Like species-wise, probably not 20 to 30% of species, but I will say that about 40% of amphibian species are endangered, and it's more than any other vertebrate group aside from maybe turtles. And so there's a lot of things that are endangered, and there's a lot of populations that have gone extinct because of something Stevie mentioned, which is chytrid fungus, which is a fungus that negatively impacts a lot of amphibian populations, especially in Central and South America. And so there are populations that have crashed, and there's actually a team over at Pitt that's then looking at how do populations and communities of animals recover after these kinds of crashes. There was a paper that also just came out recently that looked at how snake communities then also decline after these frog populations crash because they feed heavily on these frogs. So yeah, there's a lot of endangered amphibians out there and a lot of endangered turtles for sure.
Well, I feel like you don't see that many amphibians around these days, and so I wonder if you can just show us some Pennsylvania amphibians that maybe would live around here or used to live around here.
Okay. Let's see. So, Ronnaclamatans. This is a good one. So this is, you can see our collection of this species starts over here. And we've got all of these jars of this one species. And here you can see that there's, in the case of North American species, a lot of times they're subdivided into what we call subspecies. And as we mentioned before, they're subdivided in our collection based on their collection locality. So you can see that we have them from many, many different states and lots of different...
So these, it looks like, were collected in Pennsylvania in like in the middle of the 1800s?
No, this is their specimen number.
That's a specimen number, okay.
Yeah, so the oldest Ronnaclamatans that we have, I don't even know when that would be. I'm guessing it would have been early 1900s because one of the first curator of amphibians and reptiles here, Graham Netting, he would have for sure been collecting these guys. So these are some really, because this number is so low, you can tell that it's probably from the 1800s or early 1900s.
Did you get a good look at these frogs, John? Big old jar of frogs. These, and I guess you could still see frogs like this potentially in Frick Park or something maybe.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I think
even down in Shenley Park, I think too. There's a nice pond down there that I've definitely seen clamatans. I've seen Catspiana or bullfrogs. They're very prevalent too. So some species love urban areas like that.
Yeah, for sure.
Pennsylvania just designated a state salamander, correct?
The eastern, yeah. Well, we're going to talk about that later, John. John's got a spoiler alert, but I'm not going to tell you what he was asking about.
Exactly. Almost slipped out though.
Yeah, almost. Well, do you ever worry, like, what if they all came to life one day?
Oh my God! Amazing. Say that. Don't.
love it. I would love it.
It just
oh my
suddenly you would
God.
have hundreds of thousands of
love it.
critters
I
going
would be
everywhere.
Psyched out of my tree. Yes.
Mortified because it's like that's what people always ask about, and I no, because imagine they're still in the jars and you just hear the jars going clink 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 clink, and you have all these like angry vipers and like heads of crocodiles just like clomping along.
Okay, now I want like some kind of animator to come here and create a like short film about all of these things coming to life. That would be incredible.
I'll start it and I'll just scream. I'll just run around in circles screaming.
This could be your next TikTok project.
No.
Exactly.
Well, I know you pulled out some jars, and there's even more. There's not so many jars, but there's giant metal boxes full of many critters downstairs. So maybe we can loop around this way to see some other jars on the way. And
Yeah, why don't you show your Stevie's got some great reptile favorites that I always love to have her point out to people because she's got great little tidbits of information that go along with them. So I'm going to let her share her favorites over here.
all right, Stevie. No worries.
Okay, so hi. Welcome to the tiny corner of funness. So sometimes scientists get really clever with their naming systems, and this is one that, if you're a Lord of the Rings fan, you'll probably pick up on it.
Smog.
Right? Smaug, yeah. So these are cute. Oh, and of course I picked a jar where they don't have heads. Sorry, folks. But yeah, Smaug. So it's a really unique specimen, or species, excuse me. You can see all the crazy spikes on the tail. It's used for defense, right? That's protection. Nobody wants to bite something like that. But what's really cool, and hopefully the locality's not known on that one, but there we go. These ones are from Mozambique. Many Smaug species are actually located in Africa, and that's because they got the genus name of Smaug because Tolkien, South African roots. So they were like, haha, we'll do Smaug, Lord of the Rings, Tolkien. It's all connected. So that it's really fun when you look at some of the scientific names like that there's little sneaky hints. Another good one is Auroboris. These guys, again, I'm pointing out all the little spiky friends. Auroboris is it's a circle, and that's an armadillo girdled lizard. And they, if they get scared, will actually tuck into a circle like an armadillo and bite their tails, and then it's just little spiky things. So they create a circle. They're a little Ouroboros of spiky, don't eat me. It's really cute.
Can they roll after they do that?
That's a good question. I've never seen that happen. If I'm ever around an armadillo girdled lizard, I will try to poke it for you if it curls up, and I'll let you know.
We'll get to the bottom of this.
Another fun one that actually my students, so we get a lot of interns and work study students in here, that, again, this is kind of one of those morbid things, kind of harkens back to the extinct species. It's might be a little sad, but it's useful. My students really like this jar of chameleons, because if we look closer, you can actually see the adults, but then you see this weird tube. Do you see what's going on in that tube?
Oh, they're tiny. They're babies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so this is an entire reproductive series. So that's another thing that you can get out of these specimens is reproductive data. So in this situation, you can see, the actual growing baby chameleons. Maybe these ones have, been laid. Some chameleon species lay full, like eggs, and they hatch outside the body. Sometimes they are, gestated completely internally.
Like
and
live birth.
Exactly, like live birth. So in this case, we got a little bit of both. So you can see that ontogenetic series, and we have a lot of that. If we go downstairs, we actually have a lot of baby turtles, courtesy of a researcher that focused on temperature-dependent sex determination. So collections are really powerful resources for that, too, of looking at life history and, shockingly, natural history of these species.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Let's go downstairs and see some of those other species and the giant tanks of other like turtles and gators.
Yeah, a little bit of that. There's the things that we've been showing you right now are obviously little, right? I've been able to hold these jars. You've been able to poke them as well. Reptiles and amphibians can get really big. Sometimes if we span down right behind John, actually, we can see we level up and we get some bigger jars like that. And that's for some of our bigger critters that we're able to actually get into jars. However, we get some bigger ones that don't even fit in those jars, so we do have to put them into tanks. We used to have even bigger glass containers, but we realized, oh, those break easy. Let's maybe not use those.
Well, it's wild with such a narrow mouth. You just have to like jam like an animal into that jar.
So, okay, there's no jamming is involved. Everything is done with love and delicacy. And a lot of the Tetris. You have to be good with Tetris type situations to work in collections. But yeah, we, you know, you guys, like you said, you walked in and Jen and I were elbows deep in a tank of alligators and crocodiles. So our bigger specimens will be in those tanks. Our turtles, our crocs, our gators. Sometimes our snakes as well. They can get real big. So they're also in tanks too.
Wow. Yeah. Well, and like it does have sort of a faint chemically alcohol smell in here. Like, do you ever get lightheaded when you're, you know, opening up jars and working on stuff?
Yeah, I was gonna say I've definitely had moments where I'm like, I've been in here too long. Like I feel like I like see bunnies like hopping by or something. But like we keep it ventilated. We take breaks. You'll sometimes see us just dip our hands straight into the jars. We try not to do that long term over time because you know you don't really want a lot of that exposure. So we'll glove up. But
It's also hard on the hands. It feels like you need a moisturizer if you're in alcohol that much.
yeah. So you know Pittsburgh.
It is our like COVID repellent.
Phoenix collection because of that. We're the safest one.
They're all kept in Purell, essentially.
Exactly. Yeah. It is a
Oh, wow. John's curious about this giant snakehead over here.
So this is a good one that we pull out often to show on tours because obviously big things and small things tend to really fascinate people. And this is a large anaconda head. And so we like to pull this out and show people just how big anacondas can get. It's one of the 2 biggest snake species in the world.
That's wild.
Yeah.
All right, another challenge for John. Another no more
right,
backward
exactly.
stairs.
Under that handrail.
Exactly. Please hold on.
Well, John, you've done a great job on this episode. If this is the end,
Yeah. It was good knowing you.
Really nice to just meet you.
Exactly.
so we saw basically the top 2 stories first, and now we're going to the bottom story. So it's a 3-story alcohol house in total. So we're seeing the final story now.
That's right, exactly. And usually we start our tours here just because it's easy to bring people in. We're going to shut off this background noise for you in a minute. Sorry about that. It's a perk of the job.
Oh, it's totally okay.
So this is our turtle range, as we call it. So just about every cabinet that you see here and all of these tanks that you see do contain turtles. And so as you were noticing with those jars, they tend to have like sort of a restrictive size opening. And as you can imagine with turtles, they have a hard shell. It's going to be a lot harder to fit turtles into jars. That being said, all of these cabinets do contain jars of turtles, so they tend to be smaller, either species or small individuals, meaning juveniles of larger species. But all of these tanks then house turtles. And so we're going to open up a couple of these tanks to show you a couple of our favorites, or fan favorites, as I should call them, and give you a sense of some of the things that we like to show people when we bring them back here.
This is exciting. It feels like Raiders of the Lost Ark or something.
Exactly. Thank you. I think that all the time. Okay, so
First of all, that smell, it just comes right at you.
it's
Real good, right? It's like home.
Or a frat party, one of the 2.
oh
Yeah.
my
Oh dear,
God.
maybe I shouldn't have said that then.
Oh my God. Does anybody have Everclear? So this guy, anybody know what this guy is?
A snapping turtle?
You got it. Yeah. So there's 2 species of snapping turtle in the U.S., the eastern, which occurs here in Pennsylvania, and the alligator snapping turtle, which occurs further south. So we love these guys because, 1, they're big. People really love big things, as we've said. And this jaw is really incredible. So if you could feel this, you would feel that it's extremely solid. It's basically solid bone. And alligator snapping turtles have one of the strongest bite forces in the animal kingdom. Don't ask me what the number is. I can't remember, but it's up there. The other cool thing that we always point out is something on its tongue. And so if you look inside its mouth, you'll see sort of like a projection on top of its tongue. So this is referred to in science as a vermiform tongue, meaning a worm-formed tongue. And that acts exactly as you would imagine, which is to say as a lure. So these guys will sit in the water, and they'll have their mouth open, and that tongue sits there with this worm-looking thing, and they wait for a fish to swim by, and then they chomp it. So they use that as a lure to lure things into their mouths.
That is wild.
Yeah, really wild. And you can like touch this part too. Just like every part of these turtles are really impressive. This is kind of like, this is their skin, but they have these hard, bony kind of like projections. It's not bone, it's just keratin.
They look like little fingernails.
Yeah, right. And so just like everything about them is so impressive and really, really cool to look at. So we love showing them off. We've got lots of individuals of different sizes in here.
Just literally tough as nails.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, like look at this jaw. Look at that. Oh my God,
That's incredible. Oh my gosh, and you're just yanking a giant head out of the alcohol now.
Typical day in the collection.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So again, I'm just obsessed with how strong and solid this jaw is on these turtles.
That little worm part of the.
The other thing I like to point out about these, I don't know if anybody here is like from the South or if you know what noodling is. So there's this thing that people in the South do, which is apparently a way to fish for catfish, which is they go out into wetlands and they'll take their fist and put it into a crevice and hope that a catfish grabs onto it, and then they pull their fist out and the catfish is on it. And this is how some people fish. But at the same time, you could be putting your fist into a place with an alligator snapping turtle and basically get your fingers or hand chopped off. And there are several people who do this thing called noodling who are missing digits because of alligator snapping turtles.
Oh my gosh.
Unbelievable. Yeah. We used to have a collections assistant, and she's from Texas. And she's like, oh, yeah, I used to do noodling all the time. And I was like, what?
Did she? And she still had all her.
She had all 10
fingers?
digits.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was incredible. Oh, my goodness.
That's wild. And I wonder if we can take a peek at some of these. You picked out some giant salamanders for us to take a peek at.
Absolutely. Yeah, so here in North America, we have one really giant salamander called the Hellbender. And Hellbenders are really great because they have lots of different common names, which are all really crazy and cool. So Hellbender is probably the most frequently used common name of this species. But they also go by names such as old lasagna sides or snot otter, which
Snot
is really
otter's what I'm
great.
familiar with, yeah.
Exactly. And they're really cool because they tend to live in fast flowing streams, in very cold streams. And when I've gone what they call hellbendering, which is what they refer to as going to find hellbenders, you usually go with a team of people. And there'll be a team of people whose job it is to basically use crowbars to pry up these giant boulders. And then a team of people who have like snorkel gear on. And their job is, once those people with the crowbars lift up these big flat boulders, they go under there like this and try to like find the hellbenders, because the hellbenders tend to live underneath these big rocks. Yeah, it's really incredible.
And when this, I mean, it looks massive, but it's curled up here. So would that be
Yeah.
like a foot long?
More than that. So yes, you can find individuals that are about a foot long, but you can find individuals that are 2 feet long. I can't remember what the biggest size of hellbender is in the U.S., but they're very large. And then in addition,
Would this one be the kind of hellbender here in Pennsylvania?
yes, exactly. Yeah. So it's Cryptobranches Allegheniensis is the species name, and we have those here in Pennsylvania. I have yet to see them in Pennsylvania, but that's hopefully will happen at some point. I've seen them in North Carolina. And then we also have a couple of jars here of what are the Asian giant salamanders. So there's a Chinese giant salamander and a Japanese giant salamander. And these are small individuals of these respective species. You can see this is still a really big guy. But these species, I have a friend who has a picture of himself with one. And it's literally the head is here and the bottom of the body is here plus the tail. He's like grabbing it like this. It's unbelievable. Yeah, I've never seen them in the wild, but I would love to try to find those at some point. So yeah, so we've got some really big giant salamanders here, and then we've got a lot of other specimens that we are happy to talk you through.
Gosh, I feel like we're running out of time, but maybe we have time for one more. Let's choose a good one.
Oh man. Well, I'm going to choose something, and I'm sorry to like hog this like from you, but I I really love showing off things that fly that people tend to not think of as being flighted. And so there's flying reptiles and flying snakes that occur in Southeast Asia. Most of my research is in Malaysia and Borneo, so I've seen these things in the wild. And anytime you have something that flies that we don't tend to think of as being flying is just so impressive. So this is a genus called Chrysopelia. This is a snake that they have these really cool keeled belly scales, which means that they basically can wrap their abs around a tree and they can climb up these really smooth trees, and then they launch themselves off of these branches and they flatten their body top to bottom and just sort of like ribbon through the air. It's really beautiful. And then we also have what is called a Draco, so taken the name from a dragon, and this genus.
I was like, oh, is this a Harry Potter one? Now we saw Lord of the Rings.
Exactly. And so this is a reptile that has these beautiful wings on the side, for lack of a better word. It's just an extension of skin. Their rib bones extend out into those wings. And so, again, these species will climb up branches, climb up trees, get out on branches, and launch themselves off and just glide through the air. Really, really beautiful. Lots of different colors on those wings and on their dewlaps. And so these are some of the favorites that we like to pull out and show people.
Gosh, well, thank you so much for showing us this collection. And I know pre-pandemic there were plans to maybe allow people to get tours, and so it's probably too soon, but hopefully at some point in the future, folks can sign up and get a tour as well.
Absolutely. And we're always looking for enthusiastic, committed volunteers. So if you really love working with collections and you are dedicated and have good attention to detail.
You're good with a jug of alcohol, you can top things off.
Exactly. Absolutely.
Just like one big cocktail party here, sort of.
All the time.
Well, thank you so much, and hopefully we can come back again soon. It seems like there's so many things to see here.
Yeah, thanks so much. We appreciate it.